So welcome everyone. We're just going to give it 30 seconds or more time to allow everybody to join. Okay, we're still getting some people joining, so we'll just wait for a couple more seconds. Okay, so let's start. So welcome everyone to our webinar on cloud migration, future-proofing IBM applications. So my name is Eugene King. I'm your host for today, and I'm pleased to be joined by Karen Cookson, who will be your main presenter. And she'll be taking you through the bulk of today's presentations on cloud migration and the challenges of migrating legacy IBM applications. Please feel free to ask any questions using the Q&A section on the webinar interface, and we'll make sure to either address them during the presentation or in our Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So before we dive in, let's quickly go over the agenda for today's session. So during the next 15 minutes or so, we'll discuss what cloud migration is, why organizations are making the shift, and the different migration methods that are available. Additionally, we'll cover key considerations for IBM systems and best practices for migrating to the cloud. And finally, we'll highlight how our professional services, how LANSA's professional services can help ensure a seamless and efficient migration process. So let's dive straight in. Karen, over to you.
Greetings, welcome to this webinar. Hopefully everybody can hear fine. Let's crack on. So what we're going to talk about is, starting off with the cloud migration, is some of the challenges that a lot of customers seem to be having, that we come across. So that is starting off with on-premise systems or systems in a data center. They're on an IBM and they've got some old legacy systems that they want to start opening up. There's a high cost for the hardware. It doesn't scale very well as the business grows, or they have seasonal type of workloads. For instance, we've just gone past Valentine's Day, and flower retailers have a lot bigger demand on the run-up to the February 14th than other times of the year. So it's, where do you have the size of the box? What scale do you need? And a lot of customers started trying to open up some of their IBMs and other legacy systems during COVID. And then there was the issues of, what about security? How are we going to give them access? How are we going to keep that patched? So there were a lot of issues that came up with remote work and collaboration during that period. So people have started saying, can we move off-prem? What benefits do the cloud have? And 74% of organizations want, as part of cloud migration, are looking at application modernization as part of that work. So there are coming up to the times where the first era of, or the current era of ERP and CRM systems are beginning to become end of life. Companies are saying, well, while we're doing this migration, people don't want to stay on green screen or maybe even on Windows applications. People want web, people want phone, especially the youth coming into the business today. Okay, so what is cloud migration? Yeah, we're talking about this. This is where we're moving our organization's data and applications and infrastructure from on-premise to the cloud. Very straightforward. And how does that go? What is the difference there? Well, here on-premise, there is high maintenance costs. You've got hardware to purchase. You've got your server room. You've got your staff that have to keep up with security issues. And then when we start looking at migration to the cloud, well, the cloud gives you a certain level of security compliance. If you look at IBM, Microsoft, AWS, they all have compliance certification. They often take care of backup and recovery. Whereas on-prem, you might have had stacks of tapes or a virtual device, but having to go off site. And then when you start talking about high availability, you might have double the cost. You might be in a data center or need to host your high availability in a different data center than your main one. So there's all these additional costs on-prem which disappear for some in the cloud. You don't have to purchase hardware, you rent it. So there's less capital expenditure. You don't have to worry about the backup. Well, you still got to have backup in process, but that backup is taken care of a lot of the time by the cloud provider. So when we talk about this migration, it's taking it to a private cloud or a hybrid solution or a public cloud. Public clouds like Azure, AWS, IBM. There are private clouds that operate in a more unique method for yourself. With a public cloud, you are sharing your resources. Yeah, there are many servers, etc., but you might be sharing servers, you're sharing a network with other tenants. Whereas in a private cloud, that's exclusively for you. It's segmented. You've got exclusive rights. And then you've got a hybrid cloud where you've got a mixture, where you have some of your items in, say, IBM Cloud or Azure or AWS, and some in a private cloud, or even some on-prem. And some start off in that migration having that hybrid, a little bit of on-prem, a little bit of public cloud. And then they gradually migrate. So in the cloud migration, as we talked about with the costs, in the cloud, you only pay for what you need. So you've not got that upfront expenditure. You've not got that capital bill that you have to pay at the beginning. In the cloud, you are moving to hardware where you pay on demand. You pay for what you need. And that brings in scalability. And with that scale, we're going to talk about two items: scale up and scale out. Now, scale up is probably what you would do with a traditional IBM services. So if you have a server, you've got your IBM, you've got your virtual machine, your LPAR for your IBM. It's a busy time. I need a bigger one. I will get a bigger box. You still got one box, it's just bigger. It's got more processors, it's got more disk, it's got more memory. Whatever it takes, whatever that demand is, your box is bigger. Whereas some of the newer cloud platforms, where we're talking cloud native items in Azure, AWS, and some in IBM Cloud, where you actually have your boxes behind load balancers. You might be using Docker or containerization, and instead of having a bigger box, you scale the number of boxes. And this can be done dynamically. So as your systems get busier, you add more boxes. And this slide shows that in the traditional scale up system, which is these box lines here, you are getting, as demand grows, you are purchasing more, a bigger box. Whereas when you're scaling, and that's the curvy line, you are having the size fitting your demand. You're scaling out or scaling up on demand to suit what's needed. And then what you're not going to get is a sudden surge in customers where you've got extra customers and you suddenly don't have the capacity to serve the customers, which is that red triangle there, where you're losing out. Your website or your IBM is not quick enough to serve the customer demand. And that is not what you want in the business. But here, where you're doing scale on demand, which is a newer concept and what some people are moving to, you are paying for what you need in the business. You're using web technology to suit what you need. Okay, so that's what we're trying to achieve. Trying to achieve the best cost for you over time. And that is one of the major benefits of cloud migration. Okay, as we're talking about here, we're trying to reduce costs. We want to boost performance. Customers don't want to be lagging behind because the size of the box is waiting for your next upgrade. You don't want customers, external customers, not to be able to access it, or home workers using your existing legacy systems and you can't give them access to certain systems, or third parties where you want an extranet or something like that, and you're having difficulties opening up. This is this remote access that the cloud assists you in giving you that access. They can do it in a secure way because that is their business. They are there to keep you secure, whereas you might not have the staff in your current staff portfolio to handle that remote access. You might not have the scale of firewall to give people access. So migrating to the cloud gives you that benefit. And how do customers do that? Well, we've got 3 items that we're going to talk about here. Lift and shift. This is the easiest way. You're just taking what you've currently got. Maybe it's an IBM I, maybe it's a Windows server. You're taking that as is and putting it in the cloud. You're not doing anything fancy. You're just changing its location. You're getting some of the benefits, some of the security, the sizing, some of those type of benefits, but there's more to go. It's the first stepping stone. Replatforming, that's saying we've moved some of the items to the cloud, but now we're going to start using cloud specific items. We might be moving to different storage. We might be doing some Docker or containerization. And then refactoring is where you're taking your whole system and moving that into the new cloud native mechanism. And then there are different advantages. So a lift and shift is really quick. It's cost effective to do. We're taking what we're doing, we're moving it. We don't have to modernize. We don't have to optimize it for the cloud. It's a straightforward first stepping stone. And then the replatforming. Okay, we can scale better. We've got a little bit more control of the costs and performance, but there might be some more complexity there. And then the refactoring or the rebuilding of the system. This is your modernization, taking your legacy applications, and we're going to move something to a rich, featured cloud platform system. That is something that takes time. You're not going to jump in for something like that. That takes time and cost. And what about the IBM I? Well, sometimes the IBM I, it requires a little bit of extra consideration. Some say that the IBM is legacy, and I don't really like that to say the IBM is legacy. Some of the applications on the IBM I might be legacy. It might be written in RPG or COBOL, but the IBM I itself, for those that are familiar with the IBM I, it's new. There's lots of new technology. It's kept up. You can host Node.js, you can host APIs, you can do web serving, all sorts of things that you can do on the IBM I. It isn't old technology, but some of the systems are. When people see a classic green on black system of 5250, that doesn't feel well for newer staff. They struggle. There's training issues. So you want to start that migration mechanism, taking that to the cloud, where you're not going to need, maybe you're losing RPG developers, they're retiring, you've got COBOL developers still dotted around, lots of opportunity migrating to the cloud. You've got your dependencies. It might be difficult. You've got your data to convert. IBM I data, especially traditional ones that haven't kept up, and using legacy physical files, they might be restricted to alpha signed and packed or zone format, if you're talking that format. Yeah, dates will be held as maybe in a numeric format, you know, X, Y, Y, M, M, D, D. Your security, the way that you lock things down, your security models on the IBM I might not adapt to the cloud well and might need consideration. So there are things to think about as you're starting this migration. And then what are the things to consider as we're moving your IBM I specifically to the cloud? Well, you might want to move to Azure, move to something like SkyTap. You've got the IBM virtual servers that IBM are doing big pushes at the moment. Move you to the cloud. You've got, you know, opportunity to say, we've got data being stored maybe as blobs. Some customers have got blobs stored in physical files. Some have got using blob. Some have put data in the IFS. And what some customers are finding as they put more data, they've created a PDF of an invoice and they're storing it. They've got an image of a product. They're storing it on the IBM I. And they're suddenly finding a lot of storage on the IBM I are these blobs. And it's taking up a lot of data, stream files and blobs. And you can move some customers. The first step is we're going to migrate that blob storage. We're going to migrate that expensive non-databasey type activity and move that to the cloud. It's a simple, straightforward mechanism. And then your applications can refer, instead of storing it on the IBM I, refer to the location in the cloud. You're taking something that is an expense. You've got disk that is expensive, that is difficult to expand. And suddenly you've got something where you're paying for usage rather than wasted space, because we are going to use an extra terabyte of space over the next year. So we've got to provision that space ready. And then you've got the type of monitors and metrics that cloud gives. How much demand are we getting on our systems? How many users have we got? What is the response times that the users are seeing? The screen is refreshing quick enough. How many? We introduce a Node.js system on the IBM I or in the cloud with the back end or using LANSA, and you're saying, what is the issues? Are we getting people that are showing a web page but it's timing out, or they're getting a 404, or heaven forbid, you know, the application is failing and somebody's getting an error? Can we then use cloud native facilities to start firing off alerts, letting the IT people know there is a problem? So there's opportunity in the migration. There are tools to help you with this stepping stone to the cloud and helping you facilitate the next step in the evolution of your company. And what are we going to do? This cloud native shift is a strategic change. This isn't the lift and shift that start is migrating your existing box. You're going to change your IBM I from being on-prem to the cloud. You might change your high availability first. You lift and shift your high availability and stick it in the cloud, and run your native on-prem as a bit of a comfort. We've done it. We can test our failover. We do a weekend check. We're going to roll over high availability. Is our system still working? Yes, great. And then what's our strategic plan? What are we going to refactor? What can we modernize? And as we do that, you're going to have a hybrid approach. Your stepping stone, you're starting off your lift and shift. You're going to then start saying, we're going to refactor some of this. We're going to move some of the items to be cloud native. Instead of on-prem email, we're going to use cloud email. That's something a lot of customers have already started. You might have started using cloud email 5 years ago. People like, you're using Google email. You're no longer using cloud native on-prem email. Your Microsoft Exchange often has migrated to Office 365. So your companies have already started probably that migration to the cloud. But email is different from your line of business applications. These are your things. You're going to have customers maybe using your websites. You're going to be having picking systems for your warehouse. You're going to have orders being taken. People want to see in a website, what's your stock availability? These are all sorts of facilities where you can start having maybe a mixture, your website running in the cloud, and maybe calling a web service on your IBM I that's maybe running in the cloud, but in your native mechanism. And that gradually can be migrated. Taking your cost. What can you do now? What benefits can we get? Quick wins. And then start your migration. Though keeping an eye on your security, because it's important to keep your data safe.